Mom lost in the supermarket. Can the mugger shop?
I'm lost at the supermarket. Please call my mom.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is the Drunkduck QUACKCAST. QUACKCAST number 523. I'm Ozone Ocean. With me is Tance, Baines and Pitts. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. So today we're talking about folk tales. Now, I didn't say fuck tales, I said folk tales. And this is various, these stories that are like, it can be urban legends or whatever, or could be like Grimm's fairy tales, or even legends and myths. That all counts into the milieu of these stories that make up the backgrounds of our world and, give it light and colour. These lovely little stories that so many things are based on. They're quite universal. They all mean something to all of us, or sometimes we've all got our own version of the same bloody story that we think is local to our region, but isn't. It's just our own localized version of it. So your folktales are quite interesting. Even famous Grimm stories. Those ones are the same. They're they aren't just like Little Red Riding. I don't know if that's a Grimm story, but the Sleeping Beauty or whatever. They're not just one story from one region. That story is made up of all sorts of different things that are even older, and quite endemic and regional. So anyway, before we do that, we have to mention the featured comic, and I actually came up with a feature this week. The feature is the God of the River. So I'm going to tell you about the God of the River. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was the God of the River. Who knew that North Elves were such nasty bastards? Kieru of the Fire Tribe is about to find out just how mean these arrow slingers can be. Too bad his fire powers don't work yet. We join him and his tribe worshipping the hippo god idol down by the riverbank. It's a very interesting ceremony, but soon he will have to contend with the evil elves from the north. The art is colourful, professional quality and luscious. The story is fun, fantasy, action, adventure, with drama and comedy in equal parts. I quite enjoyed it. The look really grabbed me, quite sunny and colourful, like fruits in a basket almost. The beautiful, luscious colours that have been chosen for this particular comic. The North Elves are rather pale in their appearance, very white, but and whitish greyish hair, so they all have a pretty unified look to that group, whereas the Fire Elves are darker skinned and more stereotypically native looking, like islanders or something like that. They live down by the river, and so our poor hero, Kaoru, is struggling a bit at the moment, and it's pretty good. There's a centaur-like creature who isn't half horse, but half hippo. So it's very fun to look at. I hope you enjoy The God of the River. And this is a comic by N. Hurd, and it's rated E for everyone. So read it. And that was the featured comic, The God of the River. So after that we have the featured music. Gumballs has given us the theme to Lost in the Supermarket, which is a funny title for a comic. Creepy creepy piano notes in a white room, stalking, creeping, watching, waiting, preparing to strike, fading, hiding, frenetic tangles of sound beat at your ears, startling, disorienting, disjointing. Take it away, Gun Wallace with Lost in the Supermarket. And that was Gun Wallace's great theme to Smashing Ducklings. No, it was his great theme to Lost in the Supermarket, which is, a pretty cool comic by Tenza1, and it's rated E. So, check it out. Have a look at that. See what the music's about. See if you like it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. But now we're going to chat about folk tales. All sorts of folk tales from all over the world. The great thing about folk tales, especially like the Grimm's fairy tale stuff, those real traditional ones, they're copyright free. But not only that, they're copyright free stories that anyone can use. Anyone, like Disney doesn't have the copyright on friggin' Little Mermaid or Sleeping Beauty or even the Beauty and the Beast. That's not Disney's. You can do your own version of those. But not only that, those stories are all made with this kind of universal appeal to them. There's something that resonates with everybody in these stories, because that's how they became folk tales. They weren't just, written by some a writer. These things kind of evolved by all different people contributing, and different stories from everywhere, and they're coalescing into one whole. So if you do a story based on them, like Little Red Riding Hood, something like, millions of people have done those stories. They work because they have greater meaning, because there's parts in them that resonate with all sorts of different people in all sorts of different eras. So if you do a story based on that, not only will people recognize that as being a classic, it will also have a deeper resonance with them. There'll be some kind of deeper recognition that appeals to them in a certain way. So that's why those stories are used so often. Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, that kind of stuff. You'll notice in all the different versions you see of that, they all take a different tack, but it's still the core of the story, and it still resonates with people in all different ways. And I've got to find a different word to resonate, because I'm just going to keep on using that over and over and over again, and it's really annoying the crap out of me.
You can make pretend to put on like a fake French pronunciation of it and pretend it's a different word. Ragione or something. Resonate.
Resonate. Yes. I haven't got my thesaurus, unfortunately.
There apparently is a whole, I'll use the phrase cottage industry, even though I don't know what it means. I just always wanted to use it. That is based on, making fairy tale, sort of, not updated, but sort of retelling fairy tales, like what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. The story of Beauty and the Beast is told by, novelists will do that story, and it's apparently very successful for, indie authors and stuff. Those stories over and over.
Yeah.
And
I should jump in on that. I'll do the Billy Goat Scruff. Something different.
you could say that the main plot of all the like really famous resonating fairy tales are actually plots that either are a fantasy that people would like to engage in, like Cinderella, that the rags to riches story, like marrying into royalty or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of, sprinkled with a bit of revenge for abuse and stuff like that. So this is very, very appealing. And of course, it is a story that will resonate with people for as long as we have, social stratification and you have the dream of going to the top.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. On the other hand, you have common fears like fear of the unknown, like Hansel and Gretel with the woods, and the witch that eats the kids and stuff like that. So the fear of the unknown that is personified in some way, or in Little Red Riding Hood that has the wolf in the woods. Like, so you have the idea of going into an unknown area full of danger and being exposed to it for various reasons, either because you were foolhardy or that you were forced to go, and so on and so forth. So that is also something that people want to explore still today. So
it matters to us still and always.
Mhm.
Yeah, it taps into something in us that matters kind of always, no matter how many centuries pass. And, how the details change. It's kind of like it still vibrates within us in some way. I can't think of a word, but
it has an impact. It resonates a lot.
that's it.
Oh, Christ. Oh, jeez.
You're not going to escape that today. So
Damn it.
it's your also, it's like a cautionary tales for kids, like the Stranger Danger. Don't accept candy from witches that live in candy houses, and generally don't take candy from people that could be witches.
Yeah, that's a bit overblown, that one, isn't it? It's hammers at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't take candy from psycho candy people in candy villages and candy houses.
And don't take stuff from people like us, like Snow White, for example. Depending on the version, she takes things from strangers 3 times.
Whoa.
And every time it is worse. Yeah, because I think first is a bodice that she's given by the evil stepmother witch. Then, and the dwarves take it off her and she's okay again. Then it is a magic comb that she also takes after having the experience of, taking an item that is poisonous in some manner. And then she eats the apple. So basically she should be dead and stay dead, because 3 times makes you stupid. But okay, so she married.
This kind of, though, reminds me of a more recent, I guess you wouldn't call it a folktale necessarily. I think maybe in a sense it was, because I think a lot of the instances were fabricated. But back in the 80s and 90s, there was a fear around Halloween that people were doing things like putting razor blades in apples and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of harkens back to that Snow White-esque kind of fear, right? Accepting stuff from strangers who seem that they want to do something good for you, but well, in the end, you get your damn mouth cut up by razor blades, or so. And like I said, like I think a lot of those stories were fabricated. A lot of those instances, though, I think that there were a couple real ones, which is what's probably is going to happen anyway. Somebody hears about something happening, and then if they're demented enough, they'll try to do it themselves. But yeah, it's almost like a weird modernized version of that happening. And so we see these kind of simple motifs, that we see that hearken to things that still happen today. Like, think of when Meghan Markle. I kept on wanting to say Angela Merkel. When Meghan Markle married into the royal family, it was and same thing with Princess Diana too. It was a very Cinderella-esque kind of way of seeing, so those things continue to be pervasive through our lives.
That's
that captures people like strongly.
Rides and stuff like that. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying. I was saying. The big bad wolf thing kind of harkens to people hitching rides on the side of the road, and a lot of terrible murders and assaults and stuff like that happen that way. So that kind of big bad wolf comparison tends to be made a lot of times.
Bandits as well. So he might have been a.
Also, there is this idea of the pact with the devil, like making some kind of deal with a witch or with some spirit or a fairy or something like that. And this deal goes sour for some reason because it has there is a catch in it, but originally the one that makes the pact doesn't factor it in, doesn't consider it, and then the fairy tale revolves around this issue. I think, if I'm not mistaken, either Rapunzel or one of those tales, or something, I don't remember which exactly it is, but it was that this couple wanted a kid, and they struck a deal with a witch that said that she would take the baby at some point or some other thing, and then the whole point is how to reverse this deal. So the deal with the devil, in the sense that you should never do it because eventually it turns sour and stuff like that.
Yeah, the cursed wish, which is a very popular thing. The monkey's paw or the Faustian Pact. So they all factor in. I think even the genie's wishes. I'm not sure. But yeah, the monkey's paw and the Faustian Pact are the classic versions of that, and that's been repeated over and over. Because the devil will give you what you want, but not really. He will the devil will trick you. And that's how that goes all the time. And they did constructed that quite well on Rick and Morty. Is that the name of that show? Yeah, I think it is. Where the devil opened up a Needful Things sort of shop. I think that's Stephen King's story, and was selling cursed items. And Rick and Morty worked out what the curses were, and deconstructed the whole thing and beat up the devil, and it was quite funny. No, Rick and Morty didn't. It was Rick and his niece Summer. Rick and Summer beat up the devil. It was very good. So yeah, that's one that appears a lot. Now, another thing I was thinking about with the whole Snow White, with the whole evil stepmother thing. Now, the evil stepmother is something that reappears over and over and over. A lot of stories have an evil stepmother.
Yeah.
I think there's evil stepfathers too, but evil stepmothers is something that is more common, I think. And some people would say that's based on, say, distrust of women or misogyny or something, but maybe it was. Maybe it was a tendency for widowers to marry women who were, young and desirable, and they hadn't had their own children yet, and so they begin to resent the children of the family that are already there, because they're grown up and stuff like that. So there could be some logic to it. I mean, how many people do you know who've had stepmothers who they've resented and they've had bad relationships with? I know quite a lot. Yes. So yeah, perhaps that is based on, I think perhaps that really is based on something that is a universal thing, because why are those stories, why does it get repeated so much, and why do we still buy into that even today? So yeah, I mean, one of the things is, the world has changed a lot from what it was back in the day. Women would die early in childbirth. That would be a very common thing because medical care just wasn't that great, and people had a lot of kids because kids died early in childbirth as well. So that dynamic has changed, but things have changed as well because there's more divorces now, so people are more likely to get remarried. They're not likely to be older widowers or widows. People are younger when they're going to remarry. So, but it doesn't matter. The whole stepfather, stepmother thing still happens. So I just thought that was an interesting bit of resonance. What about you guys? What are your favorite reoccurring things in folk tales? I know you both like the horror.
Yeah, there's a lot of horror built in, for sure, which is a handy conflict. You have your creepy characters with unknown agendas, like preying on the innocent. Your Rumpelstiltskin types, and your trolls under bridges. I got the Billy Goat's Gruff in my head for some reason. Ever since you said like the copyright free, I'm like, what hasn't been done? Billy Goat's Gruff. I never see that.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a classic cautionary tale if there ever was one.
Yeah, well, it's like a mission, right? Are they trying to cross a bridge? I don't know. I got to look up the story.
The goats are trying to cross the bridge.
Is it kind of like backwards Three Little Pigs or something? I don't know. What is it?
There's a troll living under the bridge. The troll wants to stop the goats from crossing the bridge for some reason.
He wants to eat them. He wants to eat their guts.
Yeah,
I'll eat you for supper. You just reminded me of a record I used to have with that story.
I don't know. I know goats, and I wouldn't go up against a goat. I would bet on a goat, not on no goat. Because goats just.
I had an altercation with a goat one time. I won.
Oh, really? You're the troll. I wouldn't bet on myself against the goat. Goats are dangerous and unpredictable and clever.
They probably are, yeah. I grabbed one of his horns and just guided him back to the barn. I mean, if I hadn't been able to, it might have been badly.
Did you grab his ram bottom?
The ram's bottom? No, I'd stay away from the hindquarters. Probably get hurt that way.
I love goats in that they have this surly, intransigent expression on those faces that promises pain and danger.
Those weird eyes that are almost like octopus or squid eyes, that kind of
straight
block
line in there.
And then, they, in a lot of old traditional hoo-ha, they're acquainted with the devil. Maybe that's a newer thing, but the point of the horns of the goat and the muzzle and the ears all make the pentagram. Poor goats. It's not their fault.
Right.
They're
Yeah, it's
candy.
not their fault. But you're right about that, though. Yeah, that's true. You seen The Witch,
It's
where
interesting.
the devil is represented by that Black Phillip is represented by the goat.
Well, that
Yeah.
comes from the demon Baphomet, which is not
Right.
the devil. That's a different thing, but the way we do things these days, all demons are the devil. You know, Beelzebub and Satan and Lucifer, they're all the same thing. But in the traditional stories they come from, they're all different. But yeah, that's...
Well, now you damned us. Thanks, Oz.
I've named all. Shaitan. All of them.
Go.
All of the demon names, I doth know them. I call upon thee, Beelzebub, Satan, Baphomet,
Santa?
Leviathan, come.
It's a good thing Taj isn't here anymore.
She'd be crossing her fingers. No, for God, devil. You mustn't speak these names. They have power. They are evil. But yeah, I mean, the reality is, you know, they're folk tales. These things are not real. There's no devil.
And I mean, it kind of goes with how everything was kind of Christianized. A lot of the Grimm's fairy tales that the Grimm brothers actually compiled have a religious or Christian rap or moral to them. Well, take Cinderella, for example. You know, she's pious and she suffers, but she doesn't strike out or do anything nasty herself. And so eventually she's rewarded with, you know, sexy prince and her stepsisters get their heels chopped off and their eyes eaten out by birds, and she gets a happy ending. So a lot of them have that kind of moral in there, because in Grimm's fairy tales she does tend to pray a lot and stuff like that. But yeah, folk tales are pretty vast. I mean, they go far beyond Grimm's fairy tales too. You know, there's a lot of regional kind of like folk tales and stuff. There's folk tales that are made when, you know, countries are being born, and they start to kind of anchor their own culture, their own cultural stories and heritage that they start to pass around. And like a lot of frontier stuff, there's a lot of American stuff like that. And
there is. I know of a lot of it.
Yeah.
Got Johnny Appleseed. You got Paul Bunyan. You know, two famous mythological characters. Paul Bunyan is very made up giant with a blue ox called Babe. I love that story. Then you've got real characters that have been mythologized. You know, like Billy the Kid, Jesse James. The Daltons and you know, all those kind of people. Buffalo Bill, Wild Bill, people like that.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus! I like the proper Buffalo Bill. None of your psycho killer 70s variant.
Some of my favorites, though, are just kind of the more modern ones that, like, you know, ones that you'll find probably in some variation in almost every other town, at least here in the US. Like, you know, this is the bridge where Bloody Mary shows up. She was hit by a car. And then, you know, if you drive past it with your friends, and because those have kind of modern traditions kind of stuck to them now, where, like, you know, you're a teenager and you're hanging out with your friends and you're bored. And you're like, hey, let's go to that bridge and see if anything happens. Or, you know, I love that kind of stuff. But like here in Wisconsin and around the Great Lakes and stuff like that, and Baines, I'm sure up by you quite a lot in Canada, I'm sure there's a plethora of creatures that are tied to like regions and towns and roads and stuff like that are places kind of beyond habitation, beyond civilization. You know, these things are always out in the wild. And that's, I think, you know, you asked us before what our favorite things about folk tales is. And I think that's my favorite thing, is that they always seem to take place out beyond the boundaries of what we know. And it's kind of an expression of, you know, what doesn't the mind know yet? What can happen to you? And from there, we sometimes we pin messages onto it, you know, like don't stray far from the path or that kind of thing. But they almost always tend to take place, at least at some point, out beyond civilization. And I really like that, because anything can happen there, really, you know?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, maybe that's the important part of it. Yeah, it has to be sort of going out, leaving where you're, you know, home, or where you're comfortable.
Structure, sanity, and order out into the fringes where chaos reigns.
Yeah.
Chaos
and
disorder.
And sometimes if you're not prepared, it will curse you or kill you or follow you home or eat your children. But if you're a hero, you're properly prepared. Or if you're pious, or if you're, I don't know, you just got a really fast car or something, then you might make it out okay. You might find out a little bit more about what's beyond the unknown.
Come back and tell the tale. Well, funnily enough, a lot of Australian cinema seem to be based on that very idea. So much Australian cinema that would get popular overseas would be based on that. You know, this is a classic Mad Max, is that story, the original Mad Max. You know, they're out in...
Yeah.
The world hasn't collapsed in Mad Max, the original story. They're just out in the between the cities and in the outback, and that chaos is what results. And you know, later on, the stories are based on the idea of, you know, civilization collapsing, and this is what left. But you know, basically, these are adventures in the wastelands, and lots of other Australian stories, famous ones. The Picnic at Hanging Rock, which was a famous film. This was about like 5-6 girls who went to have a picnic at a rock formation in the bush. You know, it's meant to happen about 19...
I saw the adult film version of that.
Really?
That's another... No, not really.
So this is meant to happen about, say, 1910 or something. So these girls go out and have this picnic, and then a whole bunch of them just disappear, and no one knows what happened to them. And all that was left was just one of these girls to tell the tale and to say, yeah, what happened. But this was a movie, but it was so convincing that people believed that it was actually a real folktale. And you still have people saying, oh, what happened to the girls? Did anyone discover and find out what happened to these girls? No, it was a total made up thing. But it plays into what Pitt said about things that happen in the fringes. Because this is not in the cities. This is in the bush, in the wilds, where there's no order. And bad things happen. But scratch the surface, and basically 90% of Australian cinema that's ever gotten popular is all about exactly that, because we have no imagination.
You have a scary environment.
We're terrified of we're because most Australians live in the cities. We're a nation of people who pretend we have a proud tradition of the rural areas and being farmers and pioneers and all this. But 90% of the country, literally 90% of the country, lives in cities, away from all the crocodiles and the snakes and the monsters out there. We mythologize and make terrible stories up about the people who live in farms and small towns, because all of us live in the cities and we don't have to deal with that stuff and the mundane reality of what it's like to live in a small town or a little farm. So we imagine that it's scary and terrifying, and it's the same in America, I suppose, with people imagining the hills have eyes, the hillbillies and the weirdos, the chainsaw massacre family, Leatherfaces who live in the weird places in between. That's
Well, yeah, especially since a lot of those kinds of things, well, at least like Leatherface and stuff like that. I mean, that's another example, not to stray too much off of folk tales, but that resonates with a lot of sort of folk tales we have. Exactly what you were saying with, like, the people that live up in the North Woods that'll, kill you if you look at them sideways and stuff like that. And even Leatherface comes from Ed Gein, who always seems to find his way into my conversations lately. All roads lead to Ed Gein. But yeah, and I've been to Plainfield before. Not necessarily that Leatherface was, or that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a direct map of what happened there, but Plainfield, again, it's it's a small town in central Wisconsin, and it's not got a very big population. And Ed Gein was a farmer, and that's why he was able to do what he did for so long without anybody noticing. Digging up corpses and stuff, and it took 2 people being killed before anybody realized what was going on, and that's because he wasn't living in the midst of a big population of people. Although terrible things have happened in large cities as well. A lot of other killers work exactly in that environment. But he is one that lends himself well to a lot of that sort of folkish horror fantasy, especially when you do put them in the context of the Midwest, of the cornfields and the rolling hills and the farms out in the middle of nowhere that, have to slaughter animals and stuff like that, or you don't even necessarily know what goes on there, which is probably nothing, but at the same time, you don't know that, and it really plays on the imagination, especially when shit like that happens, and then you get that one or those few instances where it's like, oh shit, like this was happening, or oh my god, did you hear about this going on? And it's so easy for these things to kind of take root.
Yeah. The funny reality is, like, as you're saying with the big cities, probably most murders by far and serial killers happen in the big cities, but we're more scared of the wilds,
more
and
people,
small towns, and usually it's like your own family and friends that do it.
Ones. A lot of times people know they're killers, although a lot of the serial killers, that's not the case.
No.
And a lot of the murders were really bad murders too. Well, murder itself is pretty fucking bad, but a lot of murders that you hear about, especially that happened in like the 60s and 70s, were while people were hitchhiking from one town to another, and that's when a lot of people got grabbed too. Yeah, so.
Oh yeah. the ones that are popularized, the murders that are popularized, because often they're unsolved too, or they're very hard to solve.
Yeah.
So when they do solve them, they become a bigger story. Whereas the ones where the husband kills his wife, those were a dime a dozen. No one really talked about those ones because it's just such a common thing. So yeah, it's way more scary to have a stranger to be the killer than someone which is it's a weird thing itself.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you think about it, because obviously domestic abuse and stuff like that is beyond terrifying as well. But the stranger thing is scary in its own right, because this person doesn't necessarily have a reason that you can understand why they would target you. From your perspective, it's completely random.
There's nothing you can do about
really
it. Yeah.
Scary, because you have no control over that.
That's another topic I wanted to actually do a QUACKCAST on, and I forgot. People who become your enemies for no reason whatsoever. Like, for unreasoning reasons, they just decide to become your enemy. And how do you deal with it?
I told you I'm still on the fence about it. I don't have to get all worked up. I just need a little drama, that's all. Living here in Plainfield is boring as it sounds.
Oh, jeez. You poor man, Baines.
Yes. That sounds like a fictional name, by the way. I didn't know that was the name of his town.
It does, yeah. That's Plainfield, Wisconsin. I've driven through there. I did stop at the graveyard once, being the ghoul that I am, but
really?
his two victims are buried there as well. So I brought fake flowers for them. I tried to find them. I found Bernice Warden. She's pretty easy to find. She's kind of just off the path. So I kind of went to her grave, and then I couldn't find Mary's. I think it's unmarked. I didn't get a chance to look all over the graveyard, and then I wasn't able to find his. His is unmarked. Somebody took the headstone, but he's supposed to be buried between his parents, I think.
Okay.
Like that, or by his parents. So.
Well, the whole Ed Gein thing is rather weird because he's known as one of the famous serial killers, but he hardly killed anyone. His most famous thing was that he would just played with the bits and pieces of the bodies and stitched them, stitched skin and wore it and all that kind of weird stuff.
Nipple belts and stuff. Yeah, he didn't have a high body count, which it's okay. That's not a competition anybody should want to get into.
No.
But yeah, his was far more memorable than a lot of the other killers you hear about, because there was something almost creative in it. And then his whole backstory too was very, like a lot of people that go off the edge, they're abused from a young age, or they're in like his mother was extremely religious and demonized women, and he was pretty much the only woman that he really had contact with. So when she died, he was shattered, and they're unsure if he might have killed his brother as well, but nobody's really sure about that as far as I know. Yeah, they got him in the 50s. They caught him, and then he was kept in a facility probably about 5 miles from here on the lake. Once again, a lake. Lakes are great spots for
everything.
Bodies of water almost always figure into stories. But anyway, kept there, and he lived until, I can't remember how old he was, but I think he died in 1984. And from any accounts that were given, he was a model prisoner. So I don't know. It's just a sad set of circumstance. But anyway, back on the
folk tales.
The whole folktale thing. Yeah. See, he always worms his way into these kinds of conversations.
You called it beforehand, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that bodies of water stuff.
Common.
Okay.
Huh?
I like the comment about bodies of water. No.
Yeah, yeah. They seem to almost always figure. I wouldn't say always. I'm starting to kind of overgeneralize now, but in a lot of folk tales and myths and stuff like that, from all around the world, bodies of water are almost always. See, I'm doing it again. Are there a lot? And
Because they resonate with us.
they resonate with us. They trickle into resignation.
I'm resigned to that resignation. Whatever.
Resigned to this.
But yeah, there's a lot of stories and a lot of things based around it. I mean, fictionally, there's the ever popular, what's his name? The hockey mask, Jason. You know, there's that, Crystal Lake, all that stuff. But in mythology, of course, we have the famous thing that Jason's based on, which is what the freaking hell is that thing called? Didn't Beowulf fight him?
Grendel.
Grendel, that's...
Yeah. No, not Grendel. Yeah.
Grendel.
Yeah.
Grendel.
Is Jason based on Zeta? I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's the original monster, right?
Yeah, because his mother's the real monster.
Zeta and his mother. Oh, of course.
Grendel's
Yeah, I
the
didn't think of the mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in the first film, the mother is the real monster. So there you go.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, so Grendel, he lived in a river and would come out and slaughter all the people in this castle every night. And Beowulf was the only one who could fight him. And he did.
Yeah.
He ripped off his very arm and beat him with it.
Yeah. He was the final girl.
He was.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was based on the body of water in that story. Loch Ness Monster. That's a famous sort of folk myth. People still believe. You know, people have actually done scientific expeditions to discover this ancient plesiosaur or whatever they believe this thing to be, which of course there's nothing there in any of the lochs at all. You can't even see the fish, it's so dim. But yeah, it's the body of water. There's all the stories about selkies, you know, these horses that will appear to be living in the water, and you'll go down and try and make friends with them, and then they'll get you on their back and then run into the water and drown you and then eat you. So that was a story for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Horrible, disgusting monster. But that's a myth to make kids afraid of drowning, I suppose. And you know, probably related in some way to your Red Hand story in its own way.
Yeah, watch out for the unknown. Careful out there, I need a water.
Which I shared in the Patreon video. So if you want to hear my tale of woe, go listen to it.
Her tale of whoa!
Whoa, man! It's a fucking red hand it is. I don't know. I tried to go Newfie, but I don't know what it was. Okay.
I tell the story of my friend of mine, his older brother's girlfriend's sister.
This is true now. This is a true story. This is true.
Yeah.
It's actually happened.
Yeah.
It's still happening to this day.
To all of us.
Say what?
I said it's still happening to this day.
Exactly, every day.
We're kind of running out of energy. I think we spent it all talking like the 3 hours before this cast, the 3 or 4 hours. And we're like, yeah, monsters, I guess. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, freaking folktales. Well, there's so many. Well, the ones we haven't mentioned were the god stuff. So not Christian god, but you know the earlier gods like Greek mythology, that kind of stuff. So there's the folktale stuff is heavy in them. I mean, you have characters like Heracles or Hercules, and this was apparently a real guy, a real famous wrestler, but they made folktales sort of arose about his fantastic feats that he'd done, and then he got turned into a demigod in people's minds, and then we have all sorts of stories about how
And he went mad.
He went mad, did he?
Yeah, he did. He killed his wife and stuff and his kids.
Oh, really? I didn't know that part. I haven't read Hercules stories for so long. So maybe he really did that. That sounds like something that a real person would do. But yeah, so the folktales arose about him being the son of Zeus. Well, everybody was the son of Zeus. That was just, if you're Greek and you're famous, you had a famous parent.
Yeah.
But yeah, so his pedigree was being the son of Zeus, and he was massively strong. And he slaughtered this lion and wore its cloak around him, as a cloak, and it was
basically Goku.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Goku is of course based on the famous legendary journeys with the monkey god and the fish god and the pig spirit and the Buddhist priest and their journey to find the legendary scrolls or something, and hopefully a monkey can get into heaven eventually. Ooh. Something about that. So that's what Goku's based on, and his name means monkey, I think. So yeah,
I love Grogu.
Hey,
I love Grogu.
Grogu. Oh Jesus, Baines! I'll kill you, Baines. I'll kill you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Great. Yeah, so that's the
okay, I was testing Kit. I was testing her reaction to see if she's watched. She hasn't. You can tell by her face.
The baby Yoda.
She doesn't know who I'm talking to.
Well, that's another thing. So Baby Yoda, the whole thing with Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian, who is the new version of Boba Fett, basically.
Grogu is in the Mandalorian. See, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So that is based on Wolf and Cub. So yeah, that part of the story has a resonance. I mean, even though Wolf and Cub isn't a folktale, that's a graphic novel, I think, or maybe a book. There's movies about it. I don't know which came first.
It's a manga.
Yeah, manga. But there's also great movies about it as well. So yeah, the whole idea there is like this guy has to protect his little baby, and he takes it around.
Protect her and the whole thing. Like, yeah, that's sort of a classic.
But the twist on that is it's a man being the protector instead of a woman. So that's not what you'd expect automatically, because men are unfeeling, uncaring beasts.
Right.
Who don't develop affection.
They take the motif of, like, isn't he a Ronin of some kind or something? Mm-hmm. And so, it's not just that he's a man, but he is somebody who formerly, I don't know much about Wolf and Cub, so forgive me. But, he was somebody who formerly, and maybe still, is in the business of killing people, and now he's tasked to devote his life and to protect something very innocent, and preserve life.
Exactly, which gives it that huge contrast there, which gives it that point of interest. And it's the same, yes, in Mandalorian, as we're saying. He is another Ronin, basically. A warrior without a king, without a lord, making his own way in the world. So, and even
like
though
Mary Tyler Moore.
Hey,
yes. Mary Tyler Moore.
But even though this isn't based on an organic folktale, it's still picking up on something that is reasonably universal. You know, that contrast is universal, at least not the situation, and you know, developing a story from another source, another culture, and you know, turning it into something new, which is what a lot of folktales do. You know, like say Beauty and the Beast has been redone a bazillion different times by a bazillion different people. You know, remaking it. Snow White, Seven Dwarfs, Red Riding Hood, especially, been taken in all sorts of different, amazing, interesting, sexy, dark, all kinds of different ways. So yeah, there's so much.
Princess and the Pea.
I only know about 2 different versions of that one.
Oh, are there even 2? I tried to think of one that I would have no other version. Yeah.
The Golden Ball, the
I
frog.
was trying to satisfy you.
The princess and the Golden Ball. It was funny. I remember years ago, some person had written a bunch of like new fairy tales, and the idea was like this person was saying like there's no, you know, fairy tales with girls in them where girls are the heroes, you know. So this is what I'm doing. I'm having to do like a fairy tale book where the girls are the heroes, and I was trying to think. There are only fairy tales with girls are the heroes. About 2 with the boy heroes.
With male heroes. That's funny.
They don't exist. Like I think there's the Puss in Boots was one of the few I could think of, and even that they changed that to be a girl. So that's another weird thing. Why are so many fairy tales with the girl characters? There's a few boy ones like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, but.
Right.
They're usually pretty negative, though, aren't they? I mean, he just gets
They
killed.
need a bad end, the boys, yeah. They don't fare well.
To say the German ones, that there's that famous book about bad things that happen to kids. So that's not a fairy tale book. That's like a cautionary tale. Yeah, that one. That's got girl characters and boy characters, but the boy character is the main one on the front cover. Who has extra long fingernails and hair and everything. But yeah, we're sort of, like Pitt said, we're losing steam, so we should wrap it up, I suppose.
I think we've lasted our hour already, haven't we?
More of like like the old epics, like the sagas and stuff like that. I think that's when boys kind of tend to. But yeah, it's strange that they're tales. Mostly for children. Some of them maybe not necessarily. That's the tag that we put on them. I mean, there's a lot of Grimm's fairy tales. And the brother Grimm, they went around the Germanic lands and stuff like that. This was, I think, just before Germany was formerly a nation. But and to kind of help create this identity, they compiled all these stories from all over the place. So saying that they're all for kids is kind of brushing them with a very broad brush.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of them are about kids or younger people, but some of them are more about like princes and stuff like that. I do remember there is one that I remember out of that whole book. I'm sure there could be more, but there's a boy, I don't remember which story it is. There's this guy, this young man, and he has this woman that he loves, and then a witch comes or something and like turns her into a bird, I think, in a cage or something, and he actually has to go on this quest to save her. And it's like the prince saving the princess kind of motif, but it's strange. From what I remember, there's actually not a lot of that in Grimm's fairy tales. The prince saving the princess. There is
right
story that I can recall.
Interesting.
I can't remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll have to read some more. Yeah, you're right about the that's the Grimm's thing. They were collecting local lore from, like you say, the German states, the regional stories, and they were trying to save them for perpetuity. But some of the stories were not German at all. They were imported from outside.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Czechoslovakia, maybe even further afield.
France. Oh.
Yeah, France, definitely. Poland, places like this. So, yeah, it's an interesting catalogue. Another famous thing, is, of course, is the Arabian Nights, 1001 Arabian Nights,
Right.
which joins together some old, Persian stories, and some of them are Chinese, and some of them are even like added later on in the later 19th century and stuff like that, to make this lovely story of all sorts of different gathered stories from non-European regions. So we have North Africa and Central Asia, stuff like that, which is really good. It has that exotic feel, exotic to us, but of course rather mundane to people in those regions. But it's another grouping. There's people have catalogued some African stories, and that's something that's not as widely kind of circulated and known, because it's something that would be a lot smaller interest. But there's some really fascinating stories about the African gods and the origins of them, and the often a lot of those stories are about like where you got fire from, where you got writing from, stuff like that, and which particular god gave a tail to these creatures or removed a tail. So they're origin stories, which is always fun. We have a lot of those for the Australian Aboriginals. We have a lot of origin stories.
Same thing here for a lot of Native Americans as well.
Which the way they're told, they do have resonance, because the animal, and as a kid you often think, how did this creature get it this way? But the way the stories are told aren't just the creature has no tail because of this thing happened in this adventure, some kind of meaningless thing. Often these stories have a moral about this creature pissed off this god for whatever reason, and this was the punishment, and now forever after this animal is marked with this particular mark, and now that has a greater resonance with you because of those those elements about revenge or contrition and all this kind of stuff that are inherent in it.
Consciousness or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of city founding, or at least in like Greek myth and stuff like that. And again, in like the old epics and stuff, there's a lot of like city founding and stuff like that, and like regional founding, or like the families that came and how they started, or the heroes that set down there, or the monsters that were slain, and that kind of thing, and to get all academic about it, how man conquered nature, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of really cool Native American kind of monster legends and stuff too. The Windigo is probably the most famous one, and that's been kind of contorted and changed in modern day. It wasn't. It didn't have like it wasn't like. It didn't have like the skull of an elk before or anything like that. It was like a person. But yeah, I mean, and that's another thing they do kind of tend to change and stuff like that. But yeah, go check all this stuff out and get inspired, and
it's
make some bullshit.
Reinvent it yourself. Yeah, work out what makes these stories have so much meaning to people, and just take that part of it and reinvent that part alone. Fill your story with frickin' stepmothers and lakes. That's all you need.
Stepmother in a lake.
Oh, the stepmother in the lake. There's one.
There you go.
Tail.
It's like the lady in the lake, but instead she's just real horrible.
She's mean.
Poor stepmothers. I'm sorry. You're not bad people.
They bring it on themselves. Okay. Well, this has been QUACKCAST number 523. We've had Ocean, me, Baines, Pitt, Tance. But Tance has bailed early. She got eaten by the stepmother. Happens.
Pants is no longer here, Pants. I tried to... It's okay.
Exactly. She's an ex-Tance. So, bye-bye, people.
Bye.
Bye-bye.